The Russians, they're running out of some of their stuff. They don't have the chips to restart their production lines on certain weapons. So both sides are hitting certain limits.
But could the occupied southern port of Kherson be a defining moment in the 6-month conflict? It has strategic significance for both sides as it's a gateway to the Black Sea. But as you heard yesterday, Ukrainian forces are making progress in their bid to cut off the Russian troops there, thanks to their successful targeting of the Antonovsky Bridge, which is the only way to get across the Dnieper River. Charles Kupchan is Senior Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and served as Senior Direction for European Affairs on the National Security Council in the Obama administration, and pleased to say joins us this evening. Charles, welcome to the programme.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
Now, in the early days of the war, Charles, Russia captured this region with very little resistance. So how significant is the news coming from there now?
I think it's too soon to tell. The Ukrainians have hit the bridge that connects Russian troops in the city of Kherson, which is on the west bank of the Dnieper, with the oblast of Kherson, which is held by Russian troops. That's going to make it harder to resupply and to get reinforcements into the city. I'm not clear from the pictures and the reporting whether this is a bridge. We need to know, is this bridge out for good? Has the span fallen? Did it suffer some damage that can be fixed? We'll find out more in the days ahead. And then the other question is, this makes it harder for Russia to do what it wants to do, but it doesn't necessarily make it easier for a Ukrainian counteroffensive to succeed. And the real prize here is the oblast of Kherson, because it connects the Russian holdings in Donbass further to the north and east with Crimea, which the Russians annexed illegally in 2014. So I would say that it's a step forward for the Ukrainians, but not a game changer.
Yeah, and what position does this leave the Russians in?
The Russians are having a bit of a tough time right now. They have taken all of one oblast of Donbass. They're now trying to advance through the second one. They're not having much success. They have lost a little bit of ground down in Kherson, the area that we're talking about. It's unclear whether this is a strategic pause as the Russians regroup or something that would reflect that Russia is running out of steam. One of the things that has made a big difference are these multiple rocket launchers called HIMARS. The United States has been sending quite a few of them to the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians can target Russian depots and forces that are 40 or 50 miles away. There are limitations on how many rounds we can give. These are launchers that have 6 rockets each. Every time they launch, need 6 more. So there are supply constraints, but right now it has led to I would say, a tilt on the battlefield in the direction of Ukraine.
At least 3 bridges we're hearing on the Dnieper River have been damaged. One of a number of attacks, as you say, being made by the Ukrainians using these newly acquired long-range weapons from the West. How much is this recent access to better artillery going to be a real turning point in the war?
I don't think it is a step in what I would call a Ukrainian victory. That is to say, this new rocket system paves the way for Ukraine to push Russia out of its territory. Because for that, you need not just these significant long-range rocket systems, but you need ground forces capable of advancing supported by armor. Ukraine doesn't really have that. So my best guess is what we're looking at in the weeks and perhaps months ahead is something that looks more like a stalemate than a clear victory by either side. And I do think that sooner or later there will be a need for diplomacy. We've seen some success the possible deal to get grain out of Odessa and other Black Sea ports, maybe, just maybe, that's the first step toward a broader conversation about a ceasefire and discussions on territory.
Does this complicate that export of grain in any way, following this deal, which was supposedly going to be the start of things moving again?
I don't think that it jeopardizes the deal in the sense that basically on a daily basis, the Russians are lobbing missiles at the Ukrainians are fighting back. The front line moves a little bit this way, a little bit that way. I think the real question is, will the ships full of grain start to sail? Will they make it through the corridors that have been demarcated by the Ukrainian Navy as free from mines? Is this system going to work? So far, it looks like things are moving ahead, but we need to wait and see that the first shipments of Ukrainian grain are making it south to Turkey.
How much of a sense do we have at this stage, Charles, in Russia's line in Ukraine's south being really thinly stretched?
Both sides are thinly stretched. The Russians have lost tens of thousands, if you include fatalities and casualties. The Ukrainians, we're hearing, are losing 100 to 200 per day. Yes, the Ukrainians are being resupplied, but stocks are beginning to run low. The U.S. military, the British military, the German military, they're not going to empty their storehouses. The Russians, they're running out of some of their stuff. They don't have the chips to restart their production lines on certain weapons. So both sides are hitting certain limits. And that may be good news in the sense that battles like this tend to come to an end when a stalemate settles in and when both sides decide that they're not going to make much more progress on the battlefield. I'm not suggesting that Ukraine is not going to be able to take back a sizable chunk of territory, nor would I be optimistic in predicting that will happen.
Meanwhile, Russian forces have launched a missile attack on Kyiv for the first time in weeks. How concerning is that?
I think it is part of a Russian strategy of intimidation to wear down the Ukrainian spirit. It is also a function that the Russians don't have a large stockpile of precision-guided munitions. So they're going to just launch missiles in and launch other kinds of ordnance in that are not carefully targeted. That's one of the reasons that people are going to be bringing war crimes cases, because these are munitions that are killing civilians. They're not going after military targets. Right now, we really are in what I would call a limbo of sorts. We just don't know how far the Russians are going to push. Just the other day, they were talking about going back to and trying to topple the government.
Yeah, no doubt. We will speak to Charles Kupchan again soon. Many thanks for joining us, Senior Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations.